Today, I want to talk about job losses. And the reason why is because it has been a topic that I have been covering recently because it has been becoming more of an issue. And the reason why I want to cover it again is because it is actually continuing to accelerate. And obviously, Trump has shut down the BLS, so we have no idea what the official numbers are. But tracking, once again, in this video, I'm going to be looking at ADP. And the reason why I think it's important is because in my previous video where I said that all during October, there were 10,000 jobs lost a week, that number was from ADP. So once again, you'll be seeing from ADP, so from the same company that gave us that statistic, and once again, it was probably more than that, but that's what ADP was breaking down, was they were saying it was 10K per week during October. Well, now they're saying that number has even increased from the losses that we were seeing averaged during October. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this video, I'll provide my commentary on top of it, and we'll get into it.
Let's start with those ADP numbers. You just saw them up on the screen. And Ryan, this is looking bleak. So the headline, private payroll losses accelerated in the past 4 weeks, according to ADP. And they're saying private companies lost an average of 13,500 jobs a week, according to ADP data over the past 4 weeks. What's your read?
And yeah, that's crazy. Because like I had mentioned in the previous video that I was talking about it was at 10,000 per week for October. And now you're seeing 13,500. So that is, it essentially went up 1/3 or 33%. So now you're seeing over 1,300 per week, which, I mean, that's crazy. And the other thing that I want to point out about this that's so important is that this is literally just one company that does this kind of payroll processing. And yes, they are the largest out there, but that doesn't account for all the other companies that are probably seeing very similar trends. So this probably accounts for a majority of the number, but there's still plenty of other job losses that are probably occurring in other companies that do payroll processing and HR and all those kinds of things, because that's essentially what ADP does, right? So this is probably not even the full picture, which is why I'm curious what, and you hope that the BLS will be up and running. But as I had mentioned in my previous video as well, Karoline Leavitt had basically come out and said, we may never be able to recover from this shutdown. They claim that the shutdown hurt their ability to release the numbers, which, if you're giving them the benefit of the doubt while the shutdown is going on, okay, it's entirely possible that yes, people were not working that were required to be able to collect the data and synthesize it and all that kind of stuff. But then looking forward, this may have affected our ability to properly release the numbers as we go forward, even like permanently, is basically what she had stated, which to me made absolutely no sense and just blatantly shows that, backed up by these numbers, right? Backed up by the numbers that ADP are sharing, the economy is not good, and Trump is just basically trying to cover it up and say, no, it's great, just look at the stock market, and basically distract everyone on the back of that. And that's kind of where we are, I think. But yeah, this is a very troubling trend. That's why I'm covering it, because literally I think 2 weeks ago I was saying it was 10,000 jobs per week that were being lost, and now it's ballooned up to 13,500.
Action.
Yeah, and that's up from an average of 2,500 job losses per week. So those are not the kinds of changes you like to see. And
that's not even, again, what the last time I covered it, which was I believe 2 weeks ago, it was 10,000 per week. So he's probably even talking about before that. So in the September timeframe or whenever it was. So the acceleration on this, once again, has been just massive, which is why I'm covering it again, because it's a very troubling trend. And as I called out at the time that I made the video about it, well, it's only going to continue in that direction. So very concerning and just something to keep an eye on.
The quintupling of job losses. It's not Armageddon. It's not what we saw in 2007, 2008, where you're losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a month plus, but it's not going in the right direction. And we don't know more broadly what the circumstances are in the economy, because BLS was shut down. One employee at the BLS was deemed to be essential or accepted from getting shut down. As you can imagine, one person is not enough to collect data on the economy from around the country. In fact, they probably need 10 times as many people as they have to collect genuinely accurate or as accurate data as possible. So we're relying.
But they don't want that. That's the problem, is that, Trump doesn't want this information out at all, because if you think about the things that he constantly is touting, right, and had all during the first term and in the re-election campaign, was he was talking about, we have the greatest economy the world has ever seen. So he really prides himself on the economy. So to see that now that same economy is hemorrhaging tens of thousands of jobs every single week, yes, to the point that Ryan made, it's not the worst it has ever been, because at the height previously it was hundreds of thousands. But the thing that I think is more worrying about this cycle of it is, yes, they may be, there may be tens of thousands every single week, but I don't think these jobs are going to bounce back at all, because I think there's AI that's going to be introduced into these companies. So it's going to be harder and harder to find jobs if/when things rebound. And then, you're just not going to be, and by the time that actually comes around, and yes, people are hiring or would be hiring again, well, now they're just going to be buying up AI seats. And the other thing too that I think should not be discounted about this is that in other recessions or depressions or whatever you want to label this, usually what would happen is there would be a giant burst and just everything would collapse all at once. That could totally happen. I'm not going to discount that. But everything is still being held afloat by the hope that AI fulfills its promises. And it basically achieves AGI or ASI, and then it takes over the entire workforce. So that is what is essentially floating our stock market right now. So in that scenario, what essentially would need to happen is that the AI bubble bursts. So we're kind of waiting on that. Everything gets really bad where we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of jobs. It bottoms out, and then we have time to fix, get things fixed, and then there will be a steady rebound. While we're in the situation that we're looking at right now, there's no bottoming out. So it's just kind of slow drip. And so that trend will hold for longer. And in some instances, it could be argued, like in previous ones, yes, things are not really getting better, but they're kind of holding steady. But now, because of the overinflation of that bubble, everything else is suffering, while that top end number still shows that it's good, right? And so while that's happening, people are still suffering. There's still tons of jobs being lost. But the people who are in charge can just go, whatever, the stock market is still up. It's not a recession. It's not a depression. We're totally fine, whatever. So they're not affected by all the people who are losing their jobs right now. And so that is very dangerous, because then, again, that is more pressure put on everyone who's actually experiencing those job losses and everything that's happening to them. And it will put them in a worse and worse and worse economic situation, because there's no bottom out where we're like, this is the worst it could possibly be, and now we actually need to fix things and get things to turn around, and then it can rebound. There's none of that. Like that would actually be a good thing, I think, to happen. Like, yes, it would be a very dire scenario and everyone's 401ks get wiped out, and of course, right, that's not great. But then at least you hit the bottom, and then, okay, we have to fix things. We have to actually be forced into action. That's the thing, is no one is forced into any sort of action because that top line number in the stock market looks good. Forget that it's putting makeup on a pig. Like, it's not good, but that's how Trump and people who are not actually in the economy, all the people who are making the rules, they see it. They see it as, oh yeah, the top line number is good, whatever. We can turn a blind eye to everything else that's happening, like these job losses. And so that, again, this is just my argumentation, how I think about it. Obviously, there could be arguments in other directions, but that's kind of my thought process on it. And the other thing, too, is that it's not necessarily going to happen that there is going to be a bottoming out and rebound, right? Because as I said at the very beginning of this little segment, is AI coming into the workforce, all the rebounding might just be putting those jobs or that workload onto AI. And so there may not actually even be a rebound from a bottoming out. But again, I feel like we're trending in that direction anyway. So does it even matter if there's an AI bubble pop? For 401ks, yes, but for the average person's lived experience, probably not.
Hang on, ADP and other private data collectors, or private companies that work in employment and then spit out data as a result of it. But all of this is indicating that at least we're going to get we're likely to get in December a rate cut from the Federal Reserve, which is finally pushing down somewhat on mortgage rates. I think they're down to roughly 6%. They haven't cracked underneath 6%, but if they can get under 6%, that's a little bit more bearable for people. What was your reaction to this?
I mean,
and just real quick on the mortgage rate, it still doesn't matter. It still doesn't address the affordability crisis with housing, because the issue with it is the prices are too high. And that's why over and over, I'll say it for the millionth time, you need to get private equity and foreign buyers out of the market. Because, again, when you're gobbling up over a quarter of the market is being taken up by private equity and foreign buyers, okay, what are we doing here? Like, how are you... that is what is destroying the affordability of housing. A small, percentage of a rate cut isn't going to do anything for anyone. Like, when the average home buyer is 40 years old now, that's not going to do... It'll marginally change the price at the top, and especially in places where the housing prices... Anywhere where the housing prices flew up 100% within 2 years, those places will correct down a little bit, because there will be people who bought at the top who are going to be feeling economic hardships, and they're going to get foreclosed upon. That 100% will happen, but that's not going to bring back down the prices to where they were before COVID happened. And that is what you need to actually address this affordability crisis. And so like that is the problem with it, is you need to get more supply. And yes, you could go on a building spree, but the fastest and easiest way to do it, mark my words, the only way to do it in a very rapid manner is to kick out private equity and foreign buyers. That's it. Now, does anyone in the administration want to do that? Absolutely not, because they're probably getting kickbacks from all these groups, and it's just basically a fake pillar holding up the American economy, or at least a proportion of it. So of course they don't want to get rid of it, but for the health of the average American, you need to. It's insane. They're literally just screwing over average Americans for the good of their buddies, more or less, for the good of the financialization and private equity and all of these groups that I just absolutely detest.
Not to sound I actually think I might be trusting ADP's numbers more than the government's. We're expecting more government numbers in December, but ADP should have.
And just to what she said really quick, I 100% would trust ADP more than the government. Once again, they're the largest player in the space, and they have no incentive, because if their numbers are going down, right, they're making less money. So they're more incentivized to tell us what the actual numbers are if they're going in a negative trajectory, because they want to force the government to do something. Like, hey, figure out whatever you got to do, because the less people that we're processing payroll data for, well, then guess what? They're making less money. So they're more incentivized to actually give us the real numbers, whereas Trump basically, he got rid of the previous BLS commissioner or director, the person who was in charge of BLS. He got rid of him because he didn't like what he was saying. And it basically, he tried to, okay, this is the person who I'm nominating to put in that chair now. And it's basically, they're not going to get voted in, because it's someone who is a sycophant to Trump, and he basically would try and spin the numbers in whatever way he could to try and make it look as positive as possible. And you can only do that for so long. We're well beyond, in my opinion, the point of, yeah, you can spin the numbers and make people think that it's okay, that things are not what they actually are, because everyone is feeling it. They're feeling that the economy is awful, and you just can't lie about that anymore. So you need to just tell us what the numbers are, and that it is what it is. Like, sorry, you're going to go down as the worst, not the worst, that's kind of hyperbolistic, but you're going to go down as a very bad, your first term was great, but your second term is going to go down that you did absolutely nothing for the economy. You just allowed private equity to continue, and this will be historically. This won't be in the next 4 years, this won't be in the next, but like a generation from now, they're going to look back and they're going to be like, yeah, we let private equity absolutely destroy an innumerable amount of verticals within the United States, and it was possibly the worst thing that we ever did in the history of America, because it completely screwed everyone over. It destroyed the American dream, and I'm sure there will be some sort of backlash. I think we're already seeing it now with Zoran Mandamni, and you're going to see it with other political candidates in the midterms. A ton of them, I guarantee it. And so these are the things that you're going to see. And again, circling back to her point, though, I would 100% trust ADP more than whoever gets installed at the BLS, because Trump is desperately trying to save face and make it look like anything other than what's actually happening, which is the economy is in shambles under his watch.
Have a pretty good pulse of what's happening across the sector or across sectors. And so I think this probably matches people's experience. We can put the next element up on the screen. CNBC also reporting consumer confidence is hitting its lowest point since April as job worries grow. April, of course, was post-Liberation Day. So they're reporting now consumers soured on the current economy and their prospects for the future, with worries growing over the ability to find a job, according to a Conference Board survey released Tuesday. So if we combine that with the prior CNBC report from yesterday about ADP's jobs numbers, and you combine it with consumer.
And that's absolutely correct, because yes, AI, and then there's so many like ghost jobs, and they just leave. They basically HR companies that want to build a pool of candidates because it looks better on their metrics. Like that's what they're gold on. And so you have people constantly applying to jobs that don't actually exist so that they can have a huge pool, and they go, oh yeah, here's all the people who are subscribed to our hiring newsletter and are interested in working for us, and even though the job doesn't exist in the first place. So that is something that is a phenomena that is happening, but it exists. That's why you get these emails where they're like, oh yeah, we're keeping you in our candidate pool for like 3 years, where you want to keep your information in our database for 3 years. Okay, so then you get the memes where people are like, oh yeah, I apply to like 1,500 jobs and I get one interview. So of course that's going to kill applicant outlook and applicant morale, because it's a nightmare. It's awful. I mean, I've been laid off a bunch of times and I've had to find new jobs, and every single time it hasn't been that bad. Like I would get used to it and I would do a few hundred applications and I would get a couple interviews. Now I can do thousands of applications and I don't even get an email from a single one about like, oh, let's go to step 2. So yeah, when you're seeing that, that's exactly what's happening. You know, of course, consumer sentiment is dropping because that is their lived experience in the world of applying for jobs. Is, you know, like I was just talking about, you can do thousands of applications and you maybe get one interview. So that's number one. And then, yeah, number 2 is they see the headlines, they're out there of AI is replacing jobs. And so, of course, you know, do they feel good about what's going on? No. You know, you interact with the AI, you see the things it can do, and, you know, depending on what field you're in, you go, oh yeah, that could easily replace what I was doing. And so when you're in a situation like that, then yeah, of course, consumer sentiment is down.
Are saying they're increasingly worried over the ability to find a job. It sounds like that's a pretty decent picture, sadly, of what's happening across the country right now, Ryan.
Yeah, and what's so disturbing about this survey here is that the people are saying that they expect 6 months from now that we're really going to be circling the drain. They have a higher impression of the current situation than they do of the future one, and you know the reason that they survey consumers on this is because that obviously then has a self-fulfilling effect where if you are thinking about some type of significant purchase, you're going to then hold off on that. And then when you are not making those significant purchases, then that has the knock-on effects throughout the economy.
Just really quick on that point, he's correct. That is a component of it. In regards to the time frame, I think I have been saying the holidays. I think that might be the trigger point, right? So he's saying the sentiment is that in 6 months from now is probably when it's going to be really bad. And I still am holding on the holidays because of the phenomena that he is mentioning here, where, okay, holidays are coming up. Yes, normally we would have, we would spend X, $5,000 on presents or $1,000 on presents or whatever it is, right? For family and for, extended family, whatever. So here's the amount that we would normally spend. Well, because we need to save money because it's a bleak outlook, we're going to spend less. And then what that does is that craters the consumer economy. Because, and I'll get pushed back on some of my videos where people are like, oh, I had one where I was talking about this same thing where I'm saying, oh yeah, the holidays are going to trigger a recession because no one's going to be able to participate in the consumer economy. And people are like, oh, because the holidays are all about gifts. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that institutional investors, what they look at is they look at a bunch of different things like job numbers, which is why I'm covering it, is because this is a very important indicator of how the economy is doing. But they look at things like the holiday season and they say, okay, based on the last whatever years, historically, since we've been keeping this data, based on the amount of how much people spend each year during the November-December timeframe, what are we seeing this year, and how does that affect how we are investing in the stock market, or what we're doing in, prompting companies to do with jobs, or what we think that they're going to do, based on their sales that they're seeing. So that is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, yes, the holiday is all about gift giving. That's stupid. Obviously, it's not. I don't believe that. You shouldn't believe that. Like if you find happiness in physical goods and buying things, like you need to do a spiritual journey awakening or something, because that's not how you find true happiness. It's not in consumerism. But as a consumer-based economy, that is what they base a whole bunch of investments, stock investment, investments into like VCs, how loose or tight monetary investment becomes. And so when that happens and you see, oh, this year is significantly worse, people are buying way less than they did on, in previous years, well, then they pull back on that, and then that causes the economy to crater. That's where, again, that's the spark that lights the fire that burns the entire economy down. That's when people, oh yeah, we need to, if you saw like Warren Buffett, he did this months and months and months ago, where he said, I'm just basically holding everything in cash. I'm putting it in bonds and I'm holding cash, and that's what I'm doing because I don't like what I'm seeing out of the market, and I think it's going to come down. That is what happens with these institutional investors when the numbers don't look good for the holiday season. Good, right? Again, it's a consumer economy. That's not what your focus should be, but guess what? That is how our economy functions. And so when that goes away, then everyone pulls money out and then things tank and we get a depression. So once again, exactly what Ryan was saying there. Yes, people are probably going to be saving money over the holidays. They're not going to be spending as much as they normally would. And so that is much more likely to trigger some sort of depression, the AI bubble is going to burst, something like that. The other argument that I could make, that's the one that I believe is going to happen. But the other argument is, for the 6-month time frame, is, okay, that's when we should start to see new models of these LLMs come out. Because if everything is propped up on this AI bubble, and this is the other argument, is that, okay, we expect it to progress along this line, and we expect to see new models, and we expect some sort of improvement upon the previous model. And I think we're hitting kind of a saturation point where unless it hits AGI or ASI and it really takes off, I don't think there's much room for improvement, right? Because now I think we're at human level intelligence, more or less. And you can just look at all of the benchmarks and see that what I'm saying is correct. Like they're literally at like top of human level performance on the most challenging benchmarks that exist. So in the 6-month argument, how I would see that playing out is, yes, okay, the holiday season might not be great, but consumer stocks are already kind of tanking, right? They're starting to lose value, but the tech stocks continue to be, that's where all the investor money is going because they don't want to get left behind. So what will happen is that will continue to be true, and it may kind of even off, and it won't continue going on the run that it's going on. But the next time a model is released, or when they say there should be a model, like in the next 6 months, well then, if there is not a new model that comes out, or it's underwhelming, or there's not the type of progress that we thought we would see, even with all the scaling that's going on and all these data centers that are being built, well then that is when the AI bubble truly explodes, and then everything just is tanked. Because then you have to figure that's another 6 months of, okay, all these consumer stocks are continuing to tick down and down and down because the economy and all the problems that we're seeing are not being addressed because that top line number still looks good. And then, okay, now that there is not the progress that we are expecting because it's speculative. That is why the top line is so high, is that they're saying, okay, the entire market is going to be captured and taken care of by AI companies. So when an AI company does that, then the value of that company skyrockets to basically the entire value of the US GDP because it could replace all the jobs. Again, that's the speculation. That's why you're seeing the bubble inflate so high, is because everyone wants to capture that productivity. So then anything short of that blows up the entire bubble, and then everything is destroyed. That's where you're going to see the most dire of bubble explosions, is because that speculation, if for whatever reason they decide, like I said, it's an underwhelming model, they go too long without releasing a new model, whatever it is that happens, then everything comes crashing down. And so that would be the 6-month argument where, okay, yes, it continues through the holiday season, and although it may not go on the same tear, the same run that it has been, especially with, SoftBank and Peter Thiel, and if people like that continue pulling their money out of NVIDIA, then yes, you're going to see a trend where it's going to come screeching back down really fast. So again, I just wanted to present both the arguments because I can see the argument that he's making here, but I still am on the same trend line that I have been saying, which is by the end of the holiday season, things are going to get significantly worse.
Prices and inflation, according to this survey, still remain, even though job loss and the difficulty of finding a job is growing in the kind of anxiety index. Prices and inflation are still number one. Tariffs and trade are mixed in there, along with what they describe as politics.
And the interesting thing about the tariffs and trade, Trump put out something recently, and people may have glossed over this or not paid attention to this, but the reason we're probably not seeing as much of a price increase as you may have been expecting is that with tariffs and trade, a bunch of these companies bought up a ton of inventory. And it was a cycle in the news, but it happened so fast and with so many other stories that you can totally be understood for missing this. But a bunch of companies bought up a ton of inventory of stuff that would have been tariffed, and they basically stored it all in warehouses so that they could continue offering the lowest prices for as long as possible. And Trump recently came out and was basically saying, we've raised so much money, the US has gotten so much more money incoming because of these tariffs, and we've made hundreds of billions of dollars off of it now, but now you're really going to see it accelerate. And exactly for the reason, those inventories that these companies has bought up before the tariffs went into effect, they are running out or they're running low. And so you're going to see, okay, now the tariffs are going to be fully rolled out, and whether that's actually able to be passed on to the customers or not, I don't think it's really going to be able to, because I don't think customers will be able to sustain price hikes because of tariffs on top of the inflation that has already been happening. Like I said, I've seen some pullback on it from consumer brands, because if people can't afford ketchup, what can you afford? And so that is the situation that we're seeing. So these companies are having to pull back their prices. But then, yes, on top of that, now there are going to be these tariffs on companies who are getting stuff from other places. And so it's just a very interesting scenario that we'll have to see how it plays out. But just something that I wanted to call attention to, because, yes, the uncertainty of how is this actually going to affect people? Originally, the speculation was that the entire cost of the tariff was just going to be passed on to the consumer, but now it looks like only a quarter of the cost of those tariffs will be passed on. Again, I don't even know that that is sustainable, but that is the most recent news that I have seen on it. And so that means that, you know, even in that scenario, that's still a price hike of 25% of whatever the components are that go into that good that come from abroad, right, outside of America. But again, it's just an interesting scenario. We'll see how it plays out, and who knows what will happen with it. But just something that is interesting that I wanted to make you aware of.
And the federal government shutdown. So people are like nervous about the stability of the economy. Like they're seeing the tariffs up, down. Do we have a deal? We don't have a deal. The court strikes it down. Well, that we're going to appeal it. Now the Supreme Court's going to hear it. Supreme Court didn't seem to like tariffs. What's going to happen if they do that? Plus, I think by politics, I think people mean like this is just a weird time. Like this is what is going on. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene is just resigning out of nowhere. Like I think it just kind of, you know, this is a confidence survey. Our system is not inspiring confidence right now.
Yes, that much is clear. And I wanted to go back and look at this. I mean, Orrin Cass was pointing out that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, increased 1.5% over the past 6 months, which is since Liberation Day. That's actually the same increase during the 6 months prior. There's that evidence, of course, that 20% of tariff costs are what's being passed to consumers, lower than some people expected. So at the same time, that's the anti-doomer tariff pitch right now. At the same time, this lingering uncertainty.
Just what I'll say about that really quick is, yeah, because consumers can't afford to have any more of that passed on to them. That's the thing, is like if you're Heinz ketchup or whatever, right? And again, just using this example because it's very easy, it's something that doesn't cost very much, but if people are already, and it's again a topic that I have covered recently, so that's just why I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying that there's actual tariffs on ketchup, but if you're looking at it and there were, okay, so yeah, if people are already not buying your ketchup and it's because it's too expensive and so you're not seeing it, well, then you can't add more cost onto the ketchup. People are going to just buy it even less. And so, of course, people can't afford the tariff put on it. So, yeah, you can't, it's only, I think she said 20%. So I was 5% off. But yeah, if only 20% is being passed on, that's because people cannot afford any additional price added on. They're already not buying your good. So you literally can't, you just have to eat it all yourself. And quite frankly, you can afford to because you've been gouging customers anyway since COVID, because you saw, oh yeah, we can have corporate greed. We can get away with just charging more and more and more. So you're raking in record profits. So they can 100%. And that's why it's so laughable to me is like, you can all afford to pay for these tariffs. So like, shut up and just bite the bullet and do it, because we don't feel bad for you. Like when they were saying, oh yeah, tariffs and blah, blah, it's so bad. And oh no, the sky is falling. Like, you ran up all your prices anyway. You've been making record-breaking profits, so shut up and pay the tariff. This is your own fault. Like, yeah, it's just, I'm very apathetic to the argument that these companies make. I mean, literally all you have to do is look at how much money they make, and it's like, yeah, you can afford to pay the tariff. Like, I am not sympathetic to you at all. And oh, by the way, if you actually want to avoid it, then just bring manufacturing back in. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if it's that dire. Globalization, I do not think has been a particularly good bargain for the American people. So I don't feel particularly bad for you.
It feels, Ryan, like that hasn't quite, what's the right word, manifested. That hasn't quite, the lingering uncertainty hasn't quite climaxed, I guess, in the economy. And that, we talk about the AI bubble. The uncertainty, maybe it wouldn't be such like a bubble pop, but it could be something that's more gradual, because you're going to see companies amidst all of this, to the point Ryan was just making about things feeling unsettled, betting either fully in the United States, like Sharpie, which is an incredible story the Wall Street Journal had about Sharpie relocating to Tennessee and doing almost everything in Tennessee, or you're just going to say, screw it. We're not even dealing with this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I'm saying with sentiment when I was making, the longer tail argument. The effects of, oh yeah, we don't feel good about the way that the economy is going and we're going to keep more cash on hand. And this is companies as well, right? It's not just investors, but companies as well. That's why they're not hiring people, is because, okay, we have to, if we're going to have to weather some sort of hardship, well, then we need to have cash on hand so that, we can basically weather the storm. So yeah, when you're seeing that, again, there's going to be layoffs, there's going to be all these things that we're already seeing, but it's going to be a slow trickle. And that's why I say, yes, the best thing you can do is pop that bubble, have it bottom out, and then, okay, where do we go from here? And that's where hopefully you see some sort of recovery. But once again, because of AI, I don't even know that that's actually what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I feel like that sense of paralysis comes primarily from people's assessment around the AI economy. Because I think people know that, like, people know that we're in a bubble. Like, we're in a pre-pop era, and the last bubble was close enough that enough people remember having lived through it. And then the tech bubble, for anybody Gen X or even millennial or up, has we understand that this is a bubble economy. We know what this looks like. We can see the signs, but then the fear comes from this kind of doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. Because if
and that the funny thing about that is, and it's in the same field, right? It's in it was in tech, right? .com bubble. It's in tech again with AI. So it's not even that, yes, people were around for both of them, because they 100% were, but also it's in the same field. So when you see people in the same field going, this feels a lot like the .com, and it's not exactly the same, right? It's a little bit different dynamics. But when you're saying it feels the same and I can identify some of the same factors that were happening then that are happening now, well, guess what? I think they might be right. That I would trust their intuitions, because if it looks like a bubble and it sounds like a bubble and it feels like a bubble, it's probably a bubble.
The bubble doesn't pop and AI does keep going. They keep talking about how that's going to take everybody's job. And people are seeing it work, like
right.
that when, not necessarily that they're buying a robot and firing a worker, but when people are leaving, they're just not being replaced at the same pace. And people, if you're watching this, like you can tell us if that's an accurate assessment. But from everybody I talk to, that's the way they're seeing job losses going.
And that's exactly what I've been saying. And the other thing that you have to think too is if you're running a company and even if you are moderately positive on AI and think that it will continue progressing and eventually it will achieve what they're trying to with it, then at some point in time, you're going to have to lay off essentially your entire workforce. And so if that is the way it's going, and in the meantime, you can just replace people with AI, right? Get AI, enable people to have more productivity. Okay, so that is number one, is that you're just going to be, as Ryan said, replacing people as they leave with, okay, hey, you take on this workload and here's AI so that it can help you become more productive. Okay, or automate it with AI, you can do that as well. Whatever the scenario looks like. But then again, in their minds, they go, well, if we're going to get to this point and AI is going to fulfill its promise, then it's going to replace the entire workforce anyway. And so what are you going to do? Hire more people? Because hiring and training people, it's something like $100,000 for each person that you hire on and have to train. So it's very expensive because of like lost productivity, actual training, the time for the person to ramp up. You know, there's all these things that go into, okay, you know, how much does it actually cost us to hire a new person and train them up? So when you're looking at that, it's like, okay, so I'm going to hire new people. Like, can we still get by with what we have and just kind of replacing them with AI? Do I actually need to go and hire more people if I'm just going to have to go ahead and lay off everyone at some point in time anyway when AI gets fully up and running? So those are just things that they have in their mind, which, again, kind of reinforces that, you know, wait and see, if you will. So they go, oh, yeah, I don't want to hire more people because it will just cost me more money if AI is going to get up and running in a relatively short amount of time. And so that's kind of where I think a lot of people in these companies are at. You know, a lot of the leadership is they're looking at it and they're going, all right, let's hedge our bets and not hire. And then hopefully at some point in time they do have to, you know, re-up with hiring. But at the current point in time, they don't really feel a need to.
Somebody will move on to another job, or they'll quit or retire, and they'll just figure out a way not to hire for that position. And some of that is automation, that things are becoming a little more efficient. But what that means is that the efficiency gains are going to the owners of the company, the shareholders of the company. It's not as if, oh, now my life is just a little bit easier as a worker. No, you have to be more productive to make up for the fact that these other folks are leaving. So if the AI bubble pops, you're screwed, because we're going to, you know, the economy is based on it right now. If the AI bubble doesn't pop, you're still screwed, because that means it's working. And the data that you're seeing there of how hard it is to get a job is just going to, you know, go through the roof.
Yeah, and a couple thoughts on that before we move to Ukraine is, you know, we're looking already at catastrophic numbers for college graduates, or catastrophic relative to the last decade. Really high levels of unemployment for recent college graduates. Really high projections of what that unemployment is going to look like for recent college graduates as the economy calibrates. That's an optimistic way to put it, to AI. On the other hand, Ryan, I was reading this, another long CNBC dive actually into data centers, particularly in Wisconsin yesterday, because they're trying to bring one into the empty Foxconn facility, the eighth wonder of the world, of course, Foxconn.
What are they trying to bring there?
Data center, and
okay.
I think it's Microsoft, and it's being protested. I mean, there are a couple dueling data centers in the area, but one of the local meetings, it was like a planning commission meeting, 40 of the 49 people who spoke were against the data center. And it's this, so the AI boom is promising these massive sprawling data centers that will actually only in the long term supply a fairly small number of jobs compared to factory work. It's not like that at all. It's not like they're rebuilding Chrysler, a Chrysler plant. That's not what's happening. And so you're seeing AI shave off all of these jobs and then come into communities and build these massive factories that'll use up, or massive data centers will use up all of this electricity.
It's not that. I mean, I guess in the macro, it shaves off jobs, right, from other companies. In the community, it doesn't. And that's why yes, I'm correct on that. That is what I said is, these data centers do not provide almost any jobs, right? Because, after they get them set up, yes, there's the setup phase, but then everyone goes back to wherever whence they came from. And then all you really need is like one engineer on site, like one coder, right? And then a security person, and that's pretty much it. So like that doesn't actually create all that many jobs. And then, of course, it gobbles up power, it gobbles up water. Those bills go through the roof for the average resident around those areas. So, of course, there's a huge uprising against it. And even where I live, I've been looking at, there's basically been a campaign of, we want to build a new data center kind of nearby where I am. And just constantly, I've seen on social media, everyone is just raging against it. They're saying, absolutely not, we don't want it here. And I think that's a sentiment that's going to be very popular come the midterm elections, because that's exactly it. Is it really doesn't benefit anyone aside from a very small, and I'm not just talking about staffing and hiring in for the data center, but I'm talking about like population wise, right, resident wise. It does not help. Like the only people who even want them in there is basically like the AI companies, and then the people who are getting any sort of kickback from these companies, where, we're getting in the good graces of these tech companies, and hopefully we get some sort of, quid pro quo, where, they're going to come in and they're going to donate to my reelection campaign or something like that. And so, yes, I think people are rabidly turning against these data centers now. And especially when you're seeing in some places, my electricity bill is doubling. And so when you're seeing that, of course, people are just, they're not going to stand for these things being built. They're going to be incredibly pissed off about it. They're going to fight back against it. And that's what I think you're seeing now is, people are realizing, hey, we're not getting anything out of this except for negative consequences to us, higher electricity bills, and we're not going to put up with it.
And at the end of the day, they're employing like 1,000 people, still a lot in some communities that can make a big difference, but it's again not factory level. So this is this adjustment period. We're in the very early phases of it, and it's a bit frightening, honestly.
And I would guess it's actually even less than what she's saying there. I doubt it's even 1,000 people. Again, it's just not worth the trade-offs.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that reflected.
Anyway, that was about all I wanted to cover in that video. I thought it was very interesting. Yes, let's take a look at the job numbers. And once again, because it was ADP, right? So it's consistent that ADP was reporting 10,000 jobs lost per week in October, and now they're reporting 13,500 lost per week over the last 4 weeks. So it is accelerating. It will be interesting to see if that trend continues or continues to accelerate. I think it probably will be, unfortunately, and it may even get worse than that. So just wanted to make you aware of what's going on, the direction that it's trending, where we're going, because it is once again, yet another indicator that our economy is not as healthy as Donald Trump would probably have you to believe it is. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this from me, drop me a subscription below. It really does help my channel grow. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.